Hi everybody, welcome to Family Friday on Marriage by Design. I'm Nathan.
I'm Andrea, and Family Friday is a show we do every Friday about God's design for marriage and how we raise our kids. You just met, if you're watching us, you just met our youngest child, Lincoln. And if you're just listening on a podcast, you probably heard a bunch of silence. And that's because we introduced our 4-month-old Lincoln, and he just kind of sat there and smiled. Maybe you heard a little bit of cooing, but he's our youngest. And Nathan, you want to talk a little bit about him?
Sure. So, Lincoln is our fourth, and as you mentioned, just a few months old, was born back in February. And man, he has been a different baby for us. Mm-hmm. We have had some difficult babies. And, whether it was Jackson was kind of colicky and cried a lot, or high needs, didn't want to sleep, blah, blah, blah. We've had some just kind of difficult kiddos. And Lincoln is not that. He likes to sleep for the most part. You know, he's had his issues here or there. For the most part, he's a good sleeper.
At night he does, at least.
At night, he loves his mama like you wouldn't believe. He smiles. All he wants to do is smile. He's got this weird thing where if we're having a serious conversation with someone, either between the two of them, not like a fight, but like we're talking about the podcast, or we're talking about our church, or just things that are going on, he thinks that's just like the most hilarious thing ever. Yeah. And so he will just sit there. If Andrea's holding him and we're having a conversation, he just sits there and laughs the whole time, and it's very distracting to have a serious conversation with an infant that is laughing and thinks it's just hilarious that we're talking about whatever serious thing we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So that's Lincoln in a nutshell, right? I mean, not too much background because he doesn't have too much background just yet, but that's who he is. So the way that we're going to do this, as we talk about him, if you've joined us for our other weeks, but if you're new to this episode, we're each going to share one or two things that the Lord has taught us about ourselves through raising Lincoln. And of course, Lincoln's a baby. So that will be interesting. And then maybe one or two things that the Lord has taught us about parenting from having and raising Lincoln. Mm-hmm. And then we're each going to share something that, we're praying into him, that the Lord would do in him or through him as he gets older, as we try to pray over our kids. And we would totally suggest that you guys do the same. Sit down with your spouse, or if you're not married at this time, sit down yourself and think about, man, for my kids, what do I want them to be like when they get older? Yeah. What does the Lord want them to be like? And start praying into that even now as your kids are young. The power of prayer is incredible, particularly in a child's life.
And what we found, too, is our kids love being prayed for.
Yes.
So if we are praying specifically for them, they love it. They eat it up.
Yeah, and share with them, right? If the Lord gives you something on your heart that you're praying into your kids, it doesn't need to be a secret, right? I mean, tell them that, hey, I'm praying this into your life.
Yep. So the first thing we're talking about is what we've learned about ourselves from parenting Lincoln so far. Mm-hmm. So my first one is that sometimes when I'm overwhelmed, because Lincoln is the fourth, and, lots of kids means you can get overwhelmed sometimes. But sometimes when I'm overwhelmed, the answer isn't more striving, but rather rest. Mm. And sometimes rest looks like not laying around, but slowing down, sitting down with my kids and playing, even though there's a mess that needs to be dealt with. It doesn't, sometimes I have found that what my heart needs and what my mind needs is to just stop the striving and rest or connect. So that's been big for me.
It's great. Yeah, really good. That's good. Yeah, and what the Lord's taught me about myself, the first thing I want to talk about that the Lord's taught me about myself through Lincoln is that I undervalue big families. And that's a funny thing to say because I came from a big family. I'm one of 5 children and the oldest of 5. And so coming into our marriage, you didn't come from nearly as big of a family. And so I kind of always was like, yeah, I want to have a big family. And you've kind of grown into that, I think, over time. But even with that desire to have a big family and coming from a big family, I don't think I really started to have a glimpse into how amazing a big family is until we had Lincoln. So just the last few months, I feel like my understanding of how valuable a large family is and how much the Lord loves that and can use that to his glory has really grown in the last few months. So for me, the first thing that the Lord's taught me is started at least to help me understand really the value of a big family.
My second thing is, I'm going to get super honest with you guys, how important it is to be honest about my mental health. So when I was pregnant with Lincoln, I noticed pretty quickly a rapid decline with my mental health. I couldn't get out of feeling depressed, feeling like I was in a funk, that I was struggling. I was just struggling. And so I don't remember what month I was in being pregnant with him, but I went to my midwife appointment for whatever month it was. And I just said to her, I need help because I'm not in a good way. And so we talked about it, and I went on some antidepressants during that time, and it's not like that was not the first thing. I mean, I had prayed a lot and I had tried doing some things, and I just was not in a good way. So I went on some antidepressants while I was pregnant and for a while after I had Lincoln, and it changed course for me. It was what I needed. And I was not, I think there's been other times in my parenting life that, I've probably had postpartum depression and not wanted to admit it. And I don't know why. Or maybe baby blues, but probably more towards the postpartum depression. And yeah, not admitted it, not sought help in one way or another. And this time I just realized that I need to be super clear and honest about how I'm doing. Yeah. And so that was really good for me. And then I feel like I've gotten better being honest with Nathan too about how I'm doing. So in fact, just last week I talked to him and I said, I'm not okay. As far as I just feel I'm not okay today. Like, I'm overwhelmed with, there's so much going on, and I just feel overwhelmed, and we need to sit and talk and figure out how to get some of these things done and how to plan a little bit better and maybe prioritize a little bit better so that so I don't feel so overwhelmed right now. And he was awesome to be like, okay, yeah, let's figure that out. And I need to jump in on this but super important to be, for me, that I've learned to claim it. and when I'm not doing well, to figure out what needs to be done.
Yeah, that's great. The second thing for me that the Lord is dealing with me on myself is I'm not sure I totally trust the Lord with my children.
Really?
I think, as I think about children, there's a part of me that wants to control that and feel like, okay, before we have children, we need to make sure everything's all lined up and we've got all the ducks in a row. And is this the wisest thing to have more children, or all of these questions? And the Lord is really, I think, dealing with me on how many of those questions really boil down to I don't trust him when it comes to my children. And, you know, I certainly don't mean, although we will talk about this in future, either Marriage by Design, either Marriage Mondays or Family Fridays, but I don't mean this to become like a discussion about birth control or not or whatever right now. But for me, I think the Lord really raised some questions about, look, are you going to trust me in this area of your family, or are you not? And if the answer to that is not, then we have a problem. And I genuinely desire that every area of my life would be steeped in trusting the Lord and believing at more than just a superficial level that he's in charge and he knows what's best for me. And so if he says it's what's best for me, it's what's best for me, even if I don't see it at the time. And with the addition of Lincoln into our family, you know, transparently, you and I have had a lot of conversation about, well, what does this look like for our future family? Do we just trust the Lord to do what he wants to do? Do we try and, you know, control that? What do we do? And again, not trying to sound dogmatic about this, but for me, I feel like the Lord has clearly just said, you need to trust me. And you can't just give me lip service that you trust me. You got to trust me. And so for me, I have realized the last few months that I'm not sure I am fully there even now to where I trust the Lord in that, but I'm choosing to step out in faith and walk in that, even though honestly, transparently, I'm not sure I 100% feel like I trust the Lord with our family and our children.
Right. Yeah, and the Lord's brought us on the same journey at the same time with that, separately, but the same journey with that. And it's been really interesting. Yeah, and
we'll totally do probably a Marriage Monday at some point on that, because we'd love to share with you guys where the Lord's brought us through on that. And I'm certain, no question, there will be plenty of people that listen to that episode and go, I couldn't disagree with that more. That's great. And we would love to have some discussion about that when that time comes. But for me, the thing that the Lord clearly was telling me is that for him, it's not a pill or no pill issue, it's a trust issue. And am I willing to trust him with my family or not?
Okay, so then the next topic is what we've learned about being a parent, right? From Parenting Lincoln.
That's right.
Which he's only 4 months old, so there's not as much there. But what I've learned about being a parent is that what I think is best for my family is not always what really is best. And what I mean by that is, after we had Riker, I was pretty sure I was done having kids. And that 3 would be best for my family and no more. And how do you give the attention they need if you're going to have more kids than that? And how do you know, all those things. And I was wrong. So 3 was not best for our family. And then when I was pregnant with Lincoln, we never find out the sex of our children when we're pregnant with them. And I really wanted a girl because Ryan was 4 and I don't know, I've always heard, I have an older brother, so I don't have any sisters, and I've always heard that sister relationship is so precious and just something that you never have with anybody else. And I just thought, gosh, if we can have a girl for Ryan that's pretty close in age, they'd be 4-ish years apart, that would be so great. And just saying, okay, God, let's have a girl, you know? And
how'd that work out?
Lincoln's not a girl. And I was not disappointed when we had a boy. But it wasn't. But when I was pregnant, I wanted a girl, and I was like, gosh, I really hope this is a girl. So it wasn't 2 weeks, maybe, after we had Lincoln, 2 or 3 weeks that after we had Lincoln, and I said to Nathan, I thought I wanted a girl, but what I really wanted was a Lincoln. And he is what I didn't know I wanted.
It's good.
And so what I've learned about being a parent is sometimes what we think is best or what we think we want for our family, you just have to hold that so loosely and ask the Lord, is this really what's best? Is this really what's right for my family? And give those desires or those thoughts to the Lord and ask him to weed those out.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the hardest parts, I think, about being a parent is we have to recognize that while we're in charge, we're not ultimately in charge. And what that means is sometimes, in some seasons, it feels like all the time, we have to recognize that the Lord's ways are not our ways. And he might be leading our family this way, and we might not see how that's a positive thing for our family, whether it's maybe new jobs that come up across the country or, family situations that come up or whatever, where we want to just control it to death. And we just have to be able to rest in the fact that the Lord is ultimately the one in charge. And not only are we children of the Lord, but our children are children of the, literally, creations of the Lord. And so, as best we can, we do. You said with open hands. That's really important. Because so often we want to, these children are mine. And that can create a really toxic situation between us and the Lord as we try and control it and the Lord tries to control it. And bad news, we're not going to end up controlling it if the Lord, when the Lord's got it. So it's good, babe. Really good. So for me, the first thing that I've learned about parenting is babies present unique opportunities to unite the family.
That was my number 2.
We can talk. We're both going to talk about it. So one thing that I think is great is so often when we have babies, you and I, and you probably may have experienced the same thing. You have a baby and it's like the whole family gets put on pause because we got to raise a baby, right? And we'll get back to you once the baby is old enough to, be involved in the family. But right now we're raising a baby. Don't talk to me, right? And it can kind of be this like all-consuming thing. And what I think we've realized is this really presents a great opportunity to get everyone involved and really a rallying point that we can unite the family around. And it helps practically. It helps the younger kids to feel like I'm not being replaced, right? This is something that mom and dad need my help. They need me, right? I mean, there are times when even like with Riker, sending Riker, hey, can you go get me the diaper sitting over there on the table? Or can you just sit here on the couch and make him smile for 30 seconds while I go do something? To our younger kids, it's like, I'm basically an adult right now, right? Mom needs me to do adult stuff with the baby, and it's meaningful to them. And, for all of us as a family to rally around Lincoln is really, it's an opportunity I don't want you to pass up, right? If you've got a baby in the house, man, look for creative ways to incorporate the whole family into raising that baby. And that's why we have Jackson get up in the middle of the night with Lincoln. And, no, we don't do that. That's probably not a way to do that. But get your whole family involved. But it really does unite the family.
And we try to be careful too about, we're the parents, not our kids. So we're, we don't put a lot of responsibility on our kids for any other child. But it's great to have them help out at times. And I think with that uniting of the family and kind of rallying around, there's, I don't know, there's so much time where we all are just kind of, like today, we were all just together, and Jackson was trying to make Lincoln laugh, and he was very successful at it. So then, some of the other kids are trying to make him laugh, and we're just it's just we're just enjoying time together, and
it's a rallying point.
Right. And there's just a sweetness about all that. Yeah. I don't know how to describe it very well, but it's not like it's Lincoln and mom and dad, and then it's mom and dad and the rest of the family.
Right. I think that's the easy trap to fall into with a baby. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't want the baby to get hurt, and so we sort of like segregate the baby from the rest of the family. Look at the kids are resilient, right? We do. Our kids love Lincoln to death, and the trick is always to make sure they don't love him to death. Because they can be all up in his grill and all that. But you're right, and I think for sure they get more out of it than he does. Mm-hmm. Half the time Lincoln's sitting and it's like you hear the slow rumble of the kids coming towards you. It's like in Jurassic Park when the T-Rex starts walking and like they see the water in the glass. That's how I think it is for Lincoln, where he's sitting and he like sees them coming and you can almost see in his face he's like,
oh no.
But they love it, and it is a rallying cry for them, and makes them feel like they're a part of this new venture that is the Warnock family. It's not a family of 5 anymore, it's a family of 6 now. And they're a part of that.
Yep.
And that was your second one
that
as
was,
well?
That was my
Anything
second
to add to that, baby?
Too. Just what I just said is it's a fun family thing. I used to have a lot of anxiety when we would bring a new child into the family, because I felt like now my time is split even more, and that's a hard thing for me to know that my time with the kids is split even more.
Yeah.
And this time I had way less of that fear, and that's certainly due to the Lord, but it's also because I've learned more, and that we can just all come around and do this together, and it's a together thing. It's really the family is having a baby.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Perfect segue into my second thing that the Lord's taught me about being a parent, which is there is enough time to go around. And I would say a 2B to that is there is enough love to go around as well. Because I know both of us have, there just naturally is, from a literal sense, less time to go around because you have more people involved. But the Lord's economy of time and our economy of time is so different. And we were just talking about this with regards to other things a couple of days ago, that it seems like when you're really involved in doing the things the Lord asks you to do, parenting, ministry, whatever things the Lord is calling you to do, but they're not just things you're doing, they're things that the Lord has called you to do. You look around and you go, how did we get all of those things done? Right? And there's this just incredible time miracle that happens when we're walking in lockstep with the Lord's will, where he multiplies your time. You probably know someone in your life where maybe you look up to them as you feel like, man, these guys really are following the Lord's will for their life. And you've probably had the conversation we've had about those couples in our lives where you go, why is it that my life only has 24 hours in each day and their life has like 389 hours in a day?
Yeah.
Because they're just doing so much. But it's this thing that the Lord does where he just multiplies your time. And I feel like that same economy applies to our children, where when the more kids you have, yes, you might literally have less time with them, but I feel like the time that we have is somehow richer and fuller as we, again, we might be spending time with Lincoln, specifically laying on the couch, but Jackson's there and Riker's there, and it's like we're doing this together, and while the focus is only on Lincoln, it's also bringing us together as mom and dad and son as well, or mom and dad and daughter. And so, the thing going into Lincoln is I did start to get a little like, okay, man, we gotta be so intentional about, I don't want Jackson, who's 9, to feel like, okay, you're basically out the door, right? Which of course is silly, but I didn't want him to feel that way. Ryan, I didn't want her to feel like, okay, well, there's just all these boys around, and so nobody cares about the girl, right? I mean, I want to be intimately involved and loving on her in her life. And what I've realized over these last couple of months is there just is enough time to go around. I mean, we are able to connect with each of our kids individually, and we're able to unite as a group and build those relationships.
Yeah, the thing I would say to that is it does take a lot of intentionality, though. So
no question.
It takes a lot of prioritizing and intentionality. It doesn't just happen. So while there is enough time to go around, and there is great time that we have with our children, we also have made choices in our lives to allow for more of that time.
Yeah. And
we prioritize that, and we are very intentional about it. And it's because God has really called us to that. It's not like we're sweet and we just realized this is what we have to do. It's because we stumbled and fell on that, and we failed, and but God really called us to being so intentional. And so it doesn't just happen. It won't just happen. But with intentionality and prioritizing things the way they should be, there is enough time.
Yeah, and if I can just speak into that, because I feel like there's someone that's going to be listening to this that needs to hear this. Part of that is being intentional about creating opportunities to connect as a family. And you want to, if you may look at your life and go, man, I just feel like we don't have time, or how do we get people to connect? And I would say the first thing that you do is, if it's electronic and it has a screen, shut it off. Right? Starting with your phones and then going to the TV, the video games, shut them off. And I don't mean that there isn't a place for that. I thoroughly enjoy playing video games. I love video games. And Jackson, our son, loves video games, and I'm sure the rest of them will love them too. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with video games. But video games are not a way to connect with your kids at a young age, right? By the time you can really connect with them on video games, you better have already had that foundation in place, because it's going to be too late by that time. So shut off the electronics and just listen to what they want to do, right? Make a point. And Andrew's way better at this than I am. Make a point to go to your kids and say, hey, Riker, do you want to play with me for a while? What should we play? And listen to what they say. Now, you might say, well, yeah, but I don't, that means I'm going to be playing little kid games that are boring, and I don't really enjoy that.
It's not like I enjoy all the things that they want to play.
I'm sorry, but your child is counting on you to pursue their heart. Because when they get older and you want to be able to speak into the things that they're doing, you must have already laid that foundation as a child. You have to have. If you didn't, they're going to have no reason to listen to you all of a sudden when you want to get involved when they're older. And so I just want to encourage you, start today, right? It doesn't matter. Your children might be 12, right? Fine, start today.
Or older, yeah.
Right? And start pursuing them intimately today and laying that foundation by sewing into them in a way that doesn't involve buttons on a screen.
Mm-hmm. And I want to say, too, it's not... I've said this, I think, on Marriage Monday. it's not like we've arrived as parents.
No.
If you could follow me around for a week, you'd see that I fail a heck of a lot as a parent. So it's easy for us to sit here and say all these great things, or maybe not so great things, but it's easy for us to sit here and say things, but we don't have it all figured out.
No.
And we fail as parents
right.
and as people and spouses. So I don't ever want people to think that we have all the answers and we're sweet.
That's also a big reason why we do this, though, too, is because we have failed so epically and so frequently. I really, if we can help you to avoid just one of those failures, I feel like it's been worth us putting it out there. So, yeah, totally. Okay, babe, what are you praying over baby Lincoln?
Oh, yeah. So, Nehemiah 8:10, the second half of the verse says, "The joy of the Lord is my strength." And that's a big thing that I have been praying for Lincoln since he was just a couple weeks old, is that he would get his strength just from being filled by the joy of the Lord, and that people would be attracted to him because they recognize the joy of the Lord in his life, and that he would be able to witness to other people and love on other people through Christ because they're just so attracted, like flies to light, flies to light, just be so attracted to him only because of the Lord and his joy that's overflowing in his life.
That's great. So I'm gonna, because you shared that, I'm gonna share my second one first.
Okay.
And my second one comes from John 1:41. This is the part in John where John is retelling the story of Jesus gathering his disciples. And specifically in chapter 1 verse 40, it says, "One of two who heard John speak and followed Jesus was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother." Then verse 41 says, "He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, 'We've found the Messiah,' which means the Christ. He brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, 'You are Simon, the son of John. You should be called Cephas,'" which means Peter. To your point, one of the things about Andrew is not a disciple that we talk a lot about when we study the Bible. There's just not a ton about Andrew in the Bible, but the two portions in the Bible where we see Andrew named specifically, this and then when Jesus feeds the 5,000, Andrew was bringing someone to Jesus. That was kind of Andrew's heart. He saw Jesus. He thought, "Man, this guy's for real." And rather than just dropping everything and leaving, he thought, "I have to share this with someone." And that someone that he shared it with was, by human economy, the most famous of all the disciples, right? His brother Peter. And so for Andrew, he had to share what he knew with someone else. And so I would just echo, that's a prayer of mine as well, that he would be someone that just loves bringing people to an encounter with the Lord, and that his life would be something that is attractive to other people, and that he builds up that moral authority with them, that he can speak into their life and bring them ultimately to an encounter with the Holy Spirit.
Did you have another one?
I did have another one. So my second one is from Luke 2:19, and Andrea, I have raved about this verse before, so this will not surprise Andrea, but it is a verse about Mary. There's not much in the Bible specifically about Mary that's written, which always struck me as odd because it's the mother of Jesus, right? That's like a pretty big deal. But this is what it does say about Mary a couple of times in the Bible. Verse 19, the shepherd and angels have come, right? It's the Christmas story. And then in verse 19, it says, "But Mary treasured up all these things, pondering them in her heart." There's something I think that God found deeply beautiful about Mary, and it was that she wasn't always looking to the next thing. She was storing things up in her heart as they happened. And as I look at little Lincoln, we have a little swing downstairs that he sits in, and he can sit in that thing. It's like his throne. He sits in it. He can sit in it for hours. And I watch him sitting in that swing, and his eyes are always moving around. He's watching the craziness of the kids over there. He's checking out his mom over here, making lunch. His eyes are always going around, and he's looking at what's going on. And that was the verse that struck me, is he's not crying, he's not laughing, he's not calling for attention, he's just watching what's going on. And I pray that that's indicative of who he becomes, that he's someone that sees the things going on around him, recognizes the Lord's providence in those things, and stores those things up in his heart, and that he would use those things then to reach others and bring them into deeper relationship with the Lord. So that's what I'm praying over Lincoln now.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, guys, throw them in the comments down below. We always like interacting with you. Guys, we just really appreciate you joining us this month on Family Friday. Hope you've enjoyed the show so far. We will be back at you in July with a brand new topic that we will deal with all the month of July. Until then, guys, thanks for joining us, and have a great weekend.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video, or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.